No matter how many times I stick a fork into this beast, it is never done. This is one of those never-ending subjects that I have talked about once or twice before, and probably will again. Hello, welcome to my channel, Another Bibliophile Reads. My name is Greg, and today I want to talk about digital books because I have been reading digital books for more than 20 years. The other day, YouTube served me up a video from a channel I am not familiar with, and that was the Nonsense-Free Editor. The woman talked about her dealings with digital books and her ideas on ownership and more or less DRM. And I wanted to adjust some of those thoughts because some of them I don't think are actually helpful. Now, as I said, I have been reading digital books for more than 20 years. I started in June of 2002. I owned a little device. They were called PDA, or personal desktop assistants. They were little electronic devices with a small screen and a keyboard, and you could read digital books on them. The most popular digital book format back then was Microsoft Reader. There was also Moby Pocket, and I believe Sony was also around, but I don't think that worked on my PDA. But in any case, I went to a couple of websites to discuss how much I was enjoying my digital books. And I forgot the name of the website. It was like Moby Forum, something like that. And people were talking about how much they hated digital rights management. That is the idea that they did not own their books for real. And I put for real in air quotes because they could not transfer that digital book to a different format. And the people on those forums back 20 years ago, man, they were rather hot and bothered about how much they liked or disliked DRM, and they were strong proponents of removing DRM. Back then, as I said, Microsoft Reader was the big format, and there was a hacker who went under the name of Winston Smith, who basically brought out a program called ConvertLit, and it had a really rather naughty acronym, which I will not pronounce here because .lit was the name of the format. And he released this hack where you could remove the DRM from all the Microsoft Reader ebooks. And the people on this website loved Winston Smith because it made them own their books for real. I kind of have an issue with that. I don't think you're owning your books for real after you remove the DRM, because it's essentially at that point an illegal copy of that digital format. And yes, you can take that and recreate it using different programs into different formats. And that's really what they wanted to do. They didn't want to be limited to the Microsoft Reader application, which back then really was not the best. And it is still the same today. The lady at the Nonsense-Free Editor bought a new Kobo Color. It's a fancy new e-ink device. And I can see why people really are drawn to this device. But you know, her Amazon books did not work on the Kobo Color. And so you have to make sure that the format can be changed, because then you can own it for real. And I'll get to that changing of the formats in just a little bit. But as I said, do you really own that book? I mean, this is a real book. I own this. I bought it. It's on my shelf. I could lend it. I can sell it. I could die with it on my shelf, or it could be destroyed in a house fire. At one of those points, I will no longer own it. But the digital file, I just don't really get the concept of owning a digital file so you can share it with other people. And that's the kind of the big thing. You're not supposed to share that with other people. This I can share because when I share it out, I no longer have access to it. And the person who I share it to may or may not return it to me. It may not be returned in a good condition, and I may toss it in the trash can, or I may leave it on my shelf and never loan it out. That's what I would do. But what you're doing when you are buying a digital file, you are not actually buying it for real. You are buying access to that file. And that's sort of what gives these people a conniption fit. They don't like the fact that they are buying something that they only have access to and do not own for real. I think it's a little much ado about nothing, because generally speaking, you are going to have access to all of your books if you buy them from a company that stays in business. Early on, way before the Kindle, Amazon did sell Microsoft Reader ebooks. They had a whole division of that company dedicated to selling them. Eventually, that division went out of business. It probably was forced out of business when they were thinking about doing the Kindle, but I can no longer download those ebooks. However, I did play around with ConvertLit. So somewhere in an old hard drive, somewhere in my storage room, I may still have those files that I could read if I wanted to. Honestly, digging it out and bringing it over and converting it is probably a lot more trouble than just going to a library or buying it again. That is just my personal preference. And a lot of these people will talk about, once you buy your digital book, you own the rights to that you can convert it and transfer it to any device you want to, even though the companies that sold you that access would disagree. Now, this brings up to the point of DRM. Is DRM actually working as intended? Or do the owners who want to use it are mistaken about its benefits? I think they are mistaken. I don't think there is actually a whole lot of benefit to DRM, because if you are technically inclined, it is not difficult to strip DRM from your media. It's rather easy. And these companies still insist upon it. So I think they are mistaken. There are some publishers who will publish their books without DRM. I believe Tor, a publisher of science fiction and fantasy books, does not put DRM on their books, and they're doing okay. I think that is a better business model than trying to force the DRM. Now, the thing again is, I think the people who want to remove it are also mistaken, because they are putting themselves as antagonists against the people who want it. And again, I don't think there is a huge problem with reading a DRM book, because it will be available to you. The video I watched, the woman says that your books could disappear. Technically, that is possible. Since starting with the Amazon Kindle in 2008, I have not personally experienced books disappearing from my library that I have paid for. Others may have different experiences. What will happen is if a book goes out of print, you will no longer be able to purchase that book from Amazon. But in your Kindle library, you can still download that book. The one book that I checked on last night was a book called Dark Resurrection. The author was Carr with a K, Karr. And even in the title was changed from Dark Resurrection to OOP Dark Resurrection. OOP is a publishing acronym for out of print. It is not available for sale on Kindle or in paperback. The original publisher was Sam Hain Publishing. There was a bit of a scandal with that publisher a number of years ago, and the publisher went out of business. But I downloaded that book to my Kindle last night. So even though it is not available for purchase, I can still read it on my Kindle. So the idea is that your books disappear may not always be correct. Another example is Dune by Frank Herbert. I purchased that in 2009 once Kindle was just getting up to speed. And to be honest, the formatting of that book is absolutely terrible. It has no table of contents, as many early Kindle books did. But the edition that I bought is no longer available. There are other legal Kindle copies that you can buy, but my personal edition of Dune is out of print and unavailable. But I still have access to that book that I purchased somewhere around 2009. So I would be interested to see or hear about some concrete examples of books that someone purchased that actually disappear from their library. There could be, and probably are, some circumstances where that does happen. It could be intentional, and it could be a mistake. I purchased an audiobook from Audible before they were purchased by Amazon. And after they were purchased from Amazon, they had to do all this conversion of databases. And one of my books did disappear. However, the book was The Magician by W. Somerset Maugham. Another book appeared in my library. It was called The Magician, but the author was someone like Saul Stein, and it was a young adult book. Somewhere in that database conversion, those titles got swapped. Eventually, I was able to convince Audible to give me credit to buy a new version of the correct Somerset Maugham Magician. But I think the woman on the end of the phone didn't quite believe me. But it was resolved. And so when people say books disappear, I have to wonder, did they actually disappear on purpose? Is there some sort of programming error in the background? As a former computer programmer who did lots of database conversions, data does get messed up and lost in some conversion. So I'd be curious to find people who can actually point out a book that truly disappeared. I'm sure it can happen on occasion, but I'd like to know more about those circumstances to see if it's something intentional or accidental. Now back to a DRM. The lady on Nonsense Free Editor mentioned about the program Caliber, which allows you to convert one ebook format to a different ebook format. She says it was legal. And yes, the Caliber program is legal. There is an add-on which will allow you to strip the DRM from books and make it show that you can convert it to any format you like. I am not a lawyer. I do not play one on TV, but to the best of my knowledge, stripping DRM in the United States is illegal. It's probably not a crime that you will be prosecuted for, especially if you're doing it just for your personal use. I did look up on the internet last night, and there was lots of people saying that removing DRM for your personal use is legal. It was like a tweet from X. I would not consider that sound legal advice. My advice, as I said, I'm not a lawyer. So if you are really concerned about is it legal to strip DRM from your book, I would consult a lawyer. I, however, don't strip DRM from my books, even though I did play around with that back when there was the Convert Lit program. And the reason I don't is there can be some rather stiff criminal and civil penalties for people who remove DRM. Again, if you're doing it for your personal use, I don't think there is a high likelihood of you getting caught and prosecuted. As of now, things may change in the future. I have more than 2,000 Kindle books. If I stripped the DRM from them, and I think the legal site that I looked at says you can be fined up to $2,500 per incident. I don't want to go to my wife and say, we owe about $100,000, maybe more, because I stripped DRM from my books. I don't think she would take that kindly. And I don't think it's really all that necessary. Why, yes, it would be really great if ebooks were sold without DRM. And if you wanted to convert one format to another, you could do so legally and easily. I have purchased EPUB books from publishing websites. And I do use Calibre the legal way and convert them into a file that is readable for my Kindle, because that's how I prefer it. Now, maybe someday in the future, I might want to buy a device that's not Amazon. There's all these fancy book devices, Books, Boox, and some of them look really nice. You can run the Kindle app on those. You can run other e-reading apps on those devices. So they look like a lot of fun. I'm tempted to buy them. But let's say something happens to Amazon that they go out of business and I'm going to lose all those Kindle books. Would I be justified in stripping the DRM? Probably not legally. I might have to do it anyway, but I'd be worried about that because I can't afford the fine. Well, no, I can afford the fine. It's my wife who would say I'm in big trouble if I had to pay that amount and got caught. So those are my thoughts. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the digital ownership in DRM. I'm not a big fan, as I said, of stripping DRM, but there are people out there who are, it's almost a religion to them to make sure that they own their books for real, that their other media is owned for real. Well, I'm not going to say you can't do it because you're never going to listen to me. All I'm saying is that I don't think it is necessary to own your digital books for real. The idea that you're going to lose access to your books, I think, is rather slim. It may be an inconvenience if you have a Kindle book that you want to read and you just bought one of these great looking color ebook devices, you want to read it there. Yeah, that kind of sucks. But the idea of stripping it and complaining about it, I don't think that's going to change the minds of the people who want DRM. A better solution would be just not to purchase those books with DRM. If you wanted to read that title, there are many library options that you can use. If you are in a part of the country that does not have a good library, there are many libraries across this country which will allow you access to their catalog for a yearly fee. I think the last time I was talking to someone was pointing out that the New Orleans library allowed you to join for $50 a year, and their selection was pretty darn good. So that is another option, because at that point, you know you're not buying the book. You're just borrowing it. So the fact that it has DRM should not bother you at all. Well, anyway, those are my thoughts today. Please consider what you think about that. Is owning your book truly that important? I think the ability just to access books, to have the most number of books available that you'd want to read, the best option. And if some people feel more comfortable providing those books with DRM, then that's an inconvenience I'm willing to accept. I wish I could convince them otherwise, because I think it'd be better. That's a battle for the future. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.